Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. Namaste, everyone. My name is Anya Light, and I welcome you to Cosmic Conversations. This is a podcast where I speak with intuitives, healers, and visionaries, and we learn about how they explore our beautiful cosmos. Welcome. Today, I recorded a conversation with someone truly extraordinary. Her name is Nadi Hana. Let me tell you a little bit about Nadi. Nadi Hana is a professional transition specialist in service of humanity's collective awakening into unity consciousness. She's been sharing her knowledge of how advanced technologies can help us experience our multidimensionality in presentations and workshops since 2015. Nadi has worked as a licensed clinical social worker in the mental health field for over a decade, working with integrative, spiritual, and somatic-based modalities to support personal transformation. She's also a trained death doula, assisting transitions on both individual and collective levels. She currently offers international calls sharing the universal intelligence contained within sacred geometry. She shares transmissions for the expansion of human consciousness through channeled information from advanced civilizations such as the Arcturians, access codes for DNA activation, and neural pathway reconstruction with light language. In my conversation with Nadi, how the universe decided to manifest it is that my image was not recorded on video. And so we are focusing our visual energy on Nadi's beautiful face. And I love how that is how it worked out. So I hope that you will enjoy this conversation that I had with Nadi. And if you resonate with the message, any of the messages shared here today, please give this a thumbs up. And also, we would love to hear from you. So please post comments on any questions or feedback that you have below. I'm going to be doing another conversation with Nadi in the future. So if there are subjects that you'd like more in-depth conversation about, please let us know. Or if there's any other things that you'd like us to touch on related to unity consciousness or advanced civilizations or sacred geometry or all the different topics that we covered, please do leave us a comment and keep in touch. All right. Without further ado, here is our conversation.
And you and I talked about really beginning our call with an orientation and a meditation to...
Yes, that would be wonderful. Please
Lovely.
guide us.
Lovely. So I want to encourage everyone to bring your focus inward, and if it's comfortable for you, closing your eyes and really beginning to connect with your breath, taking some deep breaths in through the nose and then just releasing your day out with a big sigh. Just letting yourself fully arrive into this experience, and with every breath, grounding deeper into your body and becoming heavier on the surface that you are sitting on. Just allowing yourself to relax and become aware of your full self. Becoming aware of all of the aspects of you that are here in terms of your physical body and your emotional body and your energy body and your sensory body and your spirits. Deep breaths. Breathing in the entirety of your being and acknowledging these parts of you that have brought you to this place at this time for this information that is perfect for your awakening and knows how to work with your system in the most beautiful and genius way. Taking deep breath in and absorbing that. Breathing in that awareness of yourself as this multidimensional, expansive being. And feeling that energy throughout your entire body with every breath, just infusing your cells and activating the wholeness of who you are. And with every breath, acknowledging your physicality as well as your connection to the cosmos and our galactic community that is here to support us in our evolutionary process. Sinking deeply into your body. Take a nice deep breath into your heart. And just for a moment, feel a sense of gratitude for your ability to connect with this information, connect with yourself, and connect with those of us that are on this journey beyond time and space, knowing that we can connect always with each other. And that connection is the beginning of unity consciousness. It is the basis for us coming together to evolve and grow past the obstacles that we are facing right now. A couple more deep breaths, and as you're ready, we'll come together to talk about very extraordinary subjects.
That was exquisite, Nadi. Thank you.
Fabulous. Fabulous.
All right.
Mm.
I would love to start with you and your personal journey, and then perhaps from there expand it outward. So I'm curious, how did you get started on your spiritual path? What was the very beginning?
Mm-hmm. I have to edit a little bit because it's been a whole lifetime, right? But I think, I've been working on myself since my early 20s, working to reprogram what I knew wasn't working, through meditative practices with yoga and, a decade of living in an ashram with a meditative practice. I've always been really dedicated to my inner growth. And I worked in the mental health field, and it was a tremendous education. It was an extraordinary experience, but I really was compartmentalized in order to be in that system and in order to work with trauma. It's very big external focus. And so I knew that I really needed to move. I needed to take the next step towards integration and wholeness and connectedness. So about a decade ago, I took a total leap of faith into the void of not knowing what was next, but knowing that what was happening wasn't working. And so I left my whole world, and in that process, it's terribly anxiety inducing to not know, and yet the potential of that space is so extraordinary. And so in that potential, I really, one of the first things that came to me was unified physics and sacred geometry. And they really offered like a fundamental structure for that uncertainty and that like oh, there's a word I'm looking for, but it was very uncomfortable to not have an identity and rudderless, right? Just not have an orientation. And so the structure of the geometry was just so predictable and beautiful and harmonic. And I didn't know what was going on. I just knew I wanted to be around it. I knew I wanted it all the time. And so it's sort of this like obsessive relationship of drawing it
Mm.
and feeling better. And later I really learned that the harmonics in the geometry, when we're drawing them or working with them all the time, we are entraining our system to that harmony, right? We're connecting in this beautiful way. And that facilitates our alignments, right? It creates this connectedness that then we can open to greater information that is harder when we're fragmented and dispersed. So I was building that alignment kind of without knowing it. And then it built on itself. And I'm drawing, and people are saying, oh, you should share that. And then I'm putting up art shows, and then people are curious about the geometry. And so I'm just compelled to talk about it and share it because it's been so incredible. And it really has been a guide. And so I continued and needed to talk about it. And so I started hosting classes and calls, and the response, the geometry guides everything. And so the response from people were like, yes, I teach at a community college that wants a class on sacred geometry. Like it's
Wow.
amazing where the geometry takes me. And so then the next iteration was I had an activation with crop circles, which actually happened in my initial leap early on, but I didn't register it. And so crop circles and crop formations are inherently geometric because we're talking about the universal language of math and geometry, right? So I was really compelled to the crop circles. It was a very all-consuming experience of activation.
Mm.
And I was kind of going in the back door in just being really obsessed with these beautiful patterns and not really knowing that there's a very high level of intelligence happening.
Mm.
There is a universal cosmic intelligence that you are activating when you're working with the geometries and the crop circles.
Mm.
So, right, and there's the technology, like there's such extraordinary healing technology, uh, like for one example is that when you go into a crop circle, you can experience the spontaneous healings, right? There's all sorts of anecdotal experiences of remissions of chronic illness and
Mm.
just instant healings where people were debilitated going into the circle, and then when they come out, they're healed, right? And
Wow.
so, like one of the things that our technology is being able to learn is that there are sonic frequencies in the crop circles that align the hemispheres of our brain that
Ah.
then like we can receive healings. So I won't go too into that, but I do classes on crop circles because they're so fascinating. And then lastly, fascination with the crop circles took me into who makes the crop circles, right? And there's a whole
That was
story
my
about that.
question.
I know, right? And that's really, that's a very deep and fascinating question. And there are genuine circles that are made by advanced civilizations. And then there are, of course, hoaxes and human made circles that are part of a disinformation campaign
Ah.
in order to keep us from the incredible intelligence of the circles.
Ah.
Right. And so I've heard that there's blueprints for every crop circle on the Arcturian mothership, right? And so, that kind of information led me to learning about the advanced civilizations and the benevolent presence of those who are here to help us. And so I started learning about, primarily the Arcturians. I had a really extraordinary friend who channeled them, who I was able to begin to receive information from, receive guidance,
Mm.
intelligence, and also the expansion of my multidimensionality. Really starting to understand that there's a galactic community, that we're way bigger than this little 3D,
Yeah.
vision, and really learning telepathy and skills that have expanded my sensory capacity to understanding really the larger picture is what I would put. So it was this whole progression of,
Wow.
leap of faith, sacred geometry, crop circles into um, the galactic, community and beyond, right? It's just fascinating. It's been
That's so
fascinating.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to go into the crop circles more.
Me too. Me too.
So I'm wondering, is it that each unique crop circle could be translated into a word or a phrase or a message in a way?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they all bigger than words or bigger than a message?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that's a great question. Um, so there are specific geometries, sorry, crop circles that can be decoded to decipher a message. For example, and I wish I had them like right here, and I kind of do, but I can't get to them. There was one that looked like a disc. It looked like what's that word? Like a Morse code, not binary. It was binary code, and I'm not sure if I'm using that right. And once they deciphered it, it was it turned out to be something called Euler's theorem, which is this esoteric math theorem that is in the background of all math theorems that says, here's how everything is connected.
Oh, wow.
So that's just one tiny example. So it can be like that. It's just fascinating. And just as a side note, I was so obsessed with that one. There's a few that been really obsessed with that I just draw again and again, and I different colors and different iterations.
Mm.
And it ended up that I had like a whole wall of crop circle art at one of my shows. Like it can be really compelling just to put that note out there.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so that's one way where you can decode them, and there's fascinating information about like our planetary system, celestial events, and there's really complex codes that I don't know about, but they fascinate me. And then there's the aspect of um, like I want to say decoding the intelligence of them, where we're learning about how the crystalline structure of the soil is altered. And so it's like a decoding in that way, like a backwards learning,
Mm.
or how we're understanding that the crops that are affected by the crop circles, the seed yield is like hundreds more nutritious, or like so
Oh,
much more production. So I think your question was a little bit more about decoding and like specific information, but there's
yeah.
also an esoteric decoding of the potentiality of technology,
Yeah. And if
right?
people knew more about this, they'd be flocking to the crop circles to like bathe in that energy.
Yeah,
And I mean, I had never heard that before. And
right.
I'm into a bunch of esoteric things, so that's fascinating to me. So it's a healing balm, a healing gift given to humans
Yeah,
so that they can have different experiences with it, I guess, depending on what they're needing. It has
exactly.
okay.
They work specifically with our consciousness. Like there's tons of reports of an interface between people wanting to go see a particular crop circle or asking for one, and then having it show up in the fields.
Interesting.
So it's really fascinating. I get a little bit of the chills. But one thing I wanted to say is, when you talk about people wanting to go and bathe in the crop circles, right? The information has been suppressed because of the potency of it. It's just a
Yeah.
reality.
Yeah.
So lots of times, if you go and research them, you're going to hear about the fraud and the what's the word, the hoaxing,
Uh-huh.
and that is really an attempt to keep people from the
Okay.
potency of it. The crop circles hold the geometries for free energy devices. They contain the information that could liberate humanity. It's a
Right.
big deal, right? And so it's
Mm.
absolutely, people do flock to them every summer. It's been happening for 30 years, since the 1990s,
Mm.
to go and be in them and have that experience. And now that's kind of the only way to know if it's a real crop circle or if it's not, because
Yeah.
humans can make a really technical one, but a genuine crop circle can appear within 6 minutes in broad daylight. And there's so much information, whereas I could go on, and I do love to have classes about them, but I know we have a lot to talk about. It's really fascinating.
Well, as someone who lives surrounded by crop, like cornfields and soy
Right.
fields, and I mean, I live in Ohio, and it's just
Yeah.
so it's fascinating to me the idea of I could maybe myself interact with a crop circle if I asked the universe to please bring me one
Yeah.
nearby.
Yeah, you
So
could. I have a dear friend who actually really wants one in Ohio, so you've already got a team.
great.
They do happen everywhere. We had a huge one in Oregon here in the 1990s, and they happen everywhere in all substances or surfaces. They are concentrated in the UK because the ley lines and the geology and all sorts of reasons.
Hmm.
Um, but very fascinating rabbit hole of study.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we don't have to linger on this too long because it is a bit of a downer, but it is I find this fascinating, this question of if there are people who understand the magic and the power of things like crop circles, and then they actively repress that information, what do you think, what do you feel, Nadi, is going on in their consciousness to have them act in that way? What why?
Right. That is quite a topic. um, you know, So the deal is with the geometry, with the crop circles, with the intelligence that is available to us, it is so powerful. It is so powerful, and it would mean our liberation. So we're talking about, an elite agenda to maintain control, and that's kind of the basis. I don't ever go into too much beyond that because it's a very dark rabbit hole,
Mhm.
and I think that for me, I've gone down that rabbit hole, and I believe it. I can't spend time there. Otherwise, I would be leveled with immobility and despair.
Mhm. Mhm.
Reality. So, whenever I'm talking about these subjects, I'm drawn to them because of the potency of them for evolution, for my
Mhm.
expansion.
Mhm.
And the partnership of that is that has wanted to be suppressed for various reasons. And
Mhm.
so I pretty much will give mention to that and then solely focus on the uplifting aspects of
Yeah.
it. Yeah, because um I've done I you know I you have to do a lot of contemplation about when you find out dark information, which is absolutely real. We live in a duality, as much light as there is
Yeah.
a density in dark. And so my primary modus operandi in this world is total 24/7 dedication to maintaining my vibration
Yeah.
and maintaining a high frequency so that I'm then contributing that to our evolutionary process.
Yeah.
And so the question for me is and anytime I'm looking into that information is it of service to my
Mm.
maintenance? Is it
Mhm.
of service to my offering? And I walk away from the rest. I can't, it's not of service. It
Lovely.
actually is, it's very destructive. And so,
So
I
if
don't, that's my, just to answer. Yeah. But yeah, there's a
yeah,
lot in,
so
yeah,
you acknowledge the darkness briefly. You say, yes, this is a problem that humans are dealing with, and yet moving on and let's focus on all the potential because
exactly.
that's yeah, I mean, I have a very similar approach to that as well,
Right.
and I have to say that it has served me well. Uh, and there is still this lingering curiosity about why things happen. I don't think that'll ever go away.
No.
So, but thank you for that answer. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of your connection and collaboration with other healers and light workers, do you find that this collaboration in recent times is changing or shifting or I mean, particularly since last, March with the advent of, you know, um, so
I love that.
I'm not going to name and give energy.
Yeah. The nameless, right.
So, is your collaborative exchanges with other people changing in any way?
For sure. For sure. I find that, there's so much truth in the density and in the expansion. Those are the words I like to use. I don't like to use light and dark because they're pejorative in our minds, right? So that's a little more neutral. So there's so much truth into this, and I feel like this whole experience for the last year is completely, there's just this bifurcation that's happening where people are just for whatever default or programming that they have, they're choosing one side or the other. There's very little gray area right now. It's very polarizing. It's a little fascinating to me.
Mm.
um I mean, it's a lot fascinating, we should say, as to like what's happening right now in humanity's larger collective experience. And I find like there's a natural orientation to who I can have these conversations with, and finding those of like-minded, and being attracted to you for this conversation, and just wanting to collaborate with those that's very clear that we're going to contribute to the uplift, right? And I literally cannot go towards anything of um, density, tension. There's some really big words. I'm going to go toxicity, right? It's like really intense. I just fundamentally cannot, because I see within myself what happens. And yet there's also a total honoring. This isn't about judgment. This is like, I see where everybody needs to go, and I need to go. I always do this, like, this is the direction that I need to go of positive expansion, service, contribution to our evolutionary process, right? So it's honoring, it's knowing that they're both involved,
Right.
right? I hope I'm answering things. I know I tend to just, okay.
Yes, you are.
Great.
You called yourself a transition specialist. Is that a term that you received from your guides? Did they tell you that you were that, or did you just kind of come up with that term to describe what you were doing? How did that come into being? I've never heard anyone call themselves that before, so that struck my attention.
Yeah, that's fun. That's such a great question. Because that was me kind of around the void time, not knowing what I was doing, but knowing I was doing good things. And that was me interfacing with a seriously mainstream
Uh,
um, company. And, like a group of doctors and lawyers and very accomplished people, like, who want to know what you do in the world, and it would just popped out. I'm like, I'm a transition specialist, which sounds like something, right? And yet it's really true. Because ever since my work with ever since my work with the mental health field, I worked with, this was a very unconscious attraction in my early days, was I worked very closely with suicidality, people who had either wanted to kill themselves or had just tried. And so and also schizophrenia and different types of like psychotic, I don't like disorders, psychotic instability, psychotic. I've had to move away. I've had to deprogram myself so much from the mental health
mhm,
diagnostic criteria.
mhm,
Um, so I was really naturally oriented to people in the void and in transition between this world and that world. So
mm,
that was like moving in the mainstream with that. And then as I had my own evolution, I started to realize, I'm in transition and everybody's in transition in like in their own form individually. And I tend to meet up. This is sort of related to the other question. I tend to meet up with all of us in transition, knowing that there's more and moving away from the old programming. It's
mm,
a huge place where we can really help each
mm.
other find our way.
Yeah,
So yeah, so it's individual, but it's also collective. We're in this massive
right.
transition. So
Wow.
it just kind of happened. It really fits. That's
It's
what
a
I would
good
say.
title. I like it.
It works, doesn't it?
It
You are
does.
as well a transition specialist. And then also, you mentioned the death doula piece. You
Yes.
know, birth and death, right? I'm way more attracted to death as a transition. Mostly because I would like to really shift the collective narrative about death, because it's such an extraordinary, the potential of embracing that transition consciously is so, I mean,
Well,
the,
that's the key to our freedom there.
right,
Letting go of
right,
the fear of death. How
right,
many things in our society would shift?
right,
Whoa.
right, right. I just did a call slash class on near death experiences,
Oh,
because
lovely.
what if we all got it? What if we all knew that this is just this is just a ride in the carnival? Like, it would all be different, right? So that's a part of the transition specialist, is looking at the larger transitions of consciousness, right? And how
Mhm.
we do go on, and how this is, whatever this is. So
Well, how does one get trained to become a death doula? Did someone formally train you, or did you just teach yourself? Or how did
oh,
it?
no, there's formal trainings. It's an
Okay.
extraordinary process. There's a lot of different people who do it. There's a lot of different
Hmm.
agencies that train people to
Oh,
be death
wow.
doulas and to be of service. There's really such a shift. I think there's a large shift moving into
Huh.
no, not transition. there's a large shift moving into the conscious dying process. It's
Okay.
really a quite a movement.
Hmm.
And yes, the answer would be there's official training programs. You can get
Hmm.
certified,
Hmm.
and it's still a little interesting, but it's also really official and clear at this point.
I wondered if it had connections to hospice or if
Yeah.
it was more fringe than that.
Yeah. It- it's the it's closely related to hospice, right? It's having seen that hospice maybe gives the opportunity for conscious dying, and then wanting to build on that, and really really just wanting to take the fear out of it,
Yeah.
wanting to wanting to support the transition of returning to your loved ones and returning to this reality of peace and ease, and
Mhm.
the place that everyone who has a near death experience talks about,
Yeah.
that lovely world,
Yes.
all of that. Yeah. So,
I had a near death experience in 2011 or 12. I'm terrible with dates, but somewhere in that area. I was having surgery, and honestly, I don't know, exactly what happened. All I know is that, and because none of the nurses or the doctor said anything to me after that anything went wrong during the surgery.
right.
But yeah, I went out into the universe, and it was the one of the times that I felt, when I came back into my body, I was in this state of unconditional love for everyone and everything for weeks. And even now, just talking about it, I can still feel the frequency of that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so and then
Yeah.
it's so funny too that we're having this conversation because a few months ago, I first heard the term death doula, and I instantly thought, I need to do that, even though I haven't actually formally even looked into the process of does one become that. And then when I saw in your bio that that's what you do, I laughed. I thought, okay, great. So one day that will be the direction that I'm going as well. So could you walk me through a I don't know if there's such thing as a typical session, but like, when you connect with someone and you're assisting someone, what does that look like? What is that process how does that move?
Hmm. Well, this one's going to be a little biased on my part because, I have so many. I'm invested in so many processes, right? That fall under that category of transition specialist, right? So I am not trained. I'm trained as a death doula, but I'm not. I didn't go into a 9 to 5 practice with it. I use it. I trained to be available for when the opportunity wanted support.
Ah,
Right. So the experiences that I have had are very aligned on other levels where, in terms of the synchronicities and meeting who we need to meet, I've met incredible people, and it's just it's the highest honor to walk through that process with someone. And so I've met on my journey various people that was my service to them.
okay.
And so it hasn't been this, I'm a death doula, this is my process. It's more like a consciousness around death and the transition and the potentiality of it, like what you were saying, to tap into that consciousness that is there, that love, that extraordinary opportunity it is,
Mm,
and so, you know, sitting with some folks through that process, just watching my own activation, which was my own gift. It was their gift to me.
mm,
And I've completely forgotten what your question was, but in terms of like, how do I work with it? Mine is far more like, oh, here's a soul agreement where I'm going to be of service to you versus day to day,
yeah,
hospice like application. And
right.
yet I have friends who are of service that way. They're independent practitioners. It's not like I don't know about it being sort of an institutionalized or agency practice, but I think that it is, and I think that it's
Mm,
becoming more mainstream, which I'm really excited about in terms of
mm,
like going into like understanding that it is that universal love that we're going back to,
Yes.
and of course that's my perspective. I don't, the really neat thing about the death doula is it strives for neutrality. It's not, we're not talking about enhancing a spiritual experience or somebody's religious beliefs, although if that's what they want, it can be, right? It's just
Mhm.
basic support. It's just extraordinary support.
Mm. So
Yeah.
it's witnessing someone and meeting them where they are
Mhm.
and not asking them to change or have a specific experience. It's just, I'm going to be with you in a state of, would it be in a state of love?
Yes. Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
state of openness to whatever needs to happen,
Mm.
complete like service to that person's process, total neutrality with the, with sort of a motivation, if you will, of awareness, like awareness that the support is here.
Mm.
um, right, and that like to shift the dialogue of death from a fearful one into something that is um, soft and
Oh.
yeah, I mean it's there's so much, but just basically shifting the dying process, right? It's really extraordinary work. So yeah.
So when you're with a person as they're dying, do you feel your intergalactic guides kind of nudging you to kind of help you? Do you hear messages coming? And do you feel connected to your other civilizations out in the
Mhm.
cosmos when you're doing that work?
Mhm. Yeah. um Yes, and what I would, my instant response is I feel connected to their intergalactic guides, and that's my language, right? Like I'm, my work to open helps me hear what their guides need and want for their process, right? So yes, and it's a little different, you know.
So they, as in the person you're helping
Right.
guide.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. There's a bunch of these.
Who's the they? Okay, that makes sense. So
Yeah.
their guides are whispering in your ear
Mhm.
about how to be of service, and you are just being receptive and open to that process.
Right. Right. And then, my guides, my team, the I just call them my team. There's a lot in that statement, but they are helping me listen on perhaps levels that I might not be aware of. They can give
Right.
me that extra boost to say, oh, this would be supportive, right? Versus beyond my little 3D interpretation. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm curious on the topic of receiving messages
Mhm.
and telepathy. That
Mhm.
is a huge subject for me.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, do you have any guidance for people maybe who are watching this who want to start hearing messages from guides or want to start communicating in ways that go outside of the box of what we've been told? I mean, for me, for example, I have this ongoing telepathic communication with a being who lives across the world. He's actually in a physical form, but we don't have at this time like normal communication. I don't like send him an email or call him up. It's a telepathic connection.
Mhm.
And it's fascinating how clear the connection is, how so I communicate with his higher self rather than his personality self.
Yeah.
So that's just been a mind-blowing experience for me. And I'm curious, for someone who's just at the beginning of exploring these things, how would you recommend someone would get started to explore
Mhm.
these other ways of communication, hearing, listening, speaking?
Yeah. Yes. Oh, that was something that I didn't know about you coming into this. And I would say the same for me, where I have a psychic interdimensional relationship with a person who does it exist here in the 3D, but is very adept at navigating those worlds and who has trained me for that. So that's really fun.
I read that in your blog and I thought, oh, there's another synchronicity.
Oh, great. Great. I forget what I've put out there. So, um, right. But putting it out there is what brings this kind of conversation,
Right.
right? So super cool. That's, we would start with that, right? Like if you can, trying to find people who are talking about it and sort of normalizing the process that psychic communication and telepathic connections are real, right? It's just been completely devalued, and And, our psychic capacities are, I'm going to pause for one moment, because what's happening is I'm receiving, like, as soon as you started asking that question, it was just like, oh, okay, there's some information that wants to come through. So I want to really not do this with my mind.
Absolutely. Let's take time. Let's all take a breath.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Breathing down deep into the belly. And then slowly exhaling, lengthening the exhale.
Mm. Yeah. 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 So I can see myself trying to uh, pull apart, my own experience, which we've already sort of gone into, versus the little tidbits and tricks that I think are good to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they'll all be woven together as usual. Um, I think that I'm just going to follow what happens. So I think that one of the ways that it can start is by asking, right? Like, we're not really told that we can just ask for that. And, we can, or at least I think we're not really told. It's always a little surprising that you, like, oh, it can be a conversation right here, right now, if you're
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging that you have these supportive presences, you know, if it's comfortable to acknowledge that they're here in your highest good, and here for your well-being. That's sometimes that's comforting for people, because this is a really unknown realm. We want to make sure that um, that uh, the the presences and the support that's available to us is really of the highest frequency, right? It's nice to have that reassurance, and you can
Mm-hmm.
just state that. And then, as you mentioned, right, like, it's this whole unknown world, right? Human beings are so tiny in the world of um, the larger spectrum of sensory awareness and sensory capacity, right? Like, the whole universe, the standard language is telepathy, and we don't have that. We do not have that developed. And so we need help. And so asking for help and asking to develop these capacities in a gentle way is a great place to start, right? We can just ask, and that assumes that they're here, which is a cool,
Yeah.
right, you're already in relationship with them when you're starting to ask for that. And then I think that it's really a slow and steady, it might not be a slow and steady process for everyone, but setting the tone of here in your highest good. And then I think that it has to be partnered with your own inner work, because you have to have an awareness of yourself. You need to have an awareness of your emotional body and your physical body, because that's really where telepathy begins. I think that's really
Mm,
where we start to recognize when a frequency is showing up because of how we feel,
right.
right? And so, either emotionally or like in your physical body, like, a lot of times we'll talk about goosebumps when we're saying something that's really aligned, right? That's actually a form of communication, right?
Right.
Right. So learning, either through synchronicities, or it's like learning a new language.
Yes.
And it just takes practice to understand how they're coming into our system in the perfect way. Like, that level of intelligence knows how to interface with our psychology. That's part of what makes them advanced, you
Yes.
know. And it's not like advanced civilizations are going to be, whoever's like, that we're all working with that. I mean, it's archangels, it's animal guides, it's, all of our beings collectively. And so I think that the main answer that comes up, the main thought that comes up as you're talking about starting to work with guides and starting to work with telepathy, is asking for the highest assistance,
Yeah.
and beginning to learn how it feels,
Yeah.
how the response feels.
And I would imagine that everyone is unique,
So
correct?
unique, so unique, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So, and then I love what you're saying because we're also, unfortunately, most of us are taught to constantly ignore, deny, and repress our body sensations.
Yeah.
So it would be like learning telepathy, learning to contact guides is also doing double duty healing work, because then you're connecting with your body,
Yeah.
which could be something you've never done before in a way.
Right.
So, and I know you have the background in yoga as well. So
Right.
I'm guessing that training was also helpful to you in getting in touch with sensations and
Mm.
learning the language of sensation through your guides. Was that connected?
Totally, totally. And I think
Yeah.
that's why I say that we have to be doing our own inner work in order to learn. I don't want to say have to, right? I want to say that it's most helpful, and you're going to learn the most, you're going to learn in the most compatible way. Like when you're learning yourself, it's really compatible with the information that's coming. And it's this, I think you just mentioned, it's this beautiful partnership where higher intelligence is designed for you to become more connected to yourself. So it's that interplay. And it is body awareness, it is energy awareness. And the other thing, lastly, is that that stuff is way far out there. It is huge energy. We use such a tiny percentage of our energy, and it can blow you out. Like I have to spend a lot of time grounding
Mhm.
and being in my body. And that's the way you really know that you're connecting to solid guidance, because there's a
Mhm.
lot of stuff floating around out there.
Mhm.
So I always really talk about the partnership of being in these little bodies so that we can go out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So if someone is attempting a telepathic communication or some kind of connection with non-physical guides, would you recommend, like before doing that, like say you sit down, I'm going to do this afternoon. Would you say prior to doing it and then maybe after doing it, would you recommend a specific practice of any kind to help self-care and integrate and
Mm,
not get blown out too much and to be
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's such a unique, right? It's like everybody's process is their own, and that's part of learning what works for you. This will sound simple and easy. A lot of times food can be really grounding, so
totally.
there's something, if you need to have a snack, like for me, honestly, water is really integrating for me, so sometimes I'll go into water. Sometimes it's just sleep. It's learning what your body needs for that integration, and
Mhm.
that's so unique. But there's a lot of little tricks that I think the baseline would be to say it is really important, no matter what way works for you, to ground and to
Yeah.
try to integrate that information. Because I'd be okay not being here. so like so I have to really have a disciplined effort to stay. I would much rather be out there on the ships.
Yes.
And so part of me knows that an aspect of me is on the ships, is in other, solar systems and galaxies, doing my own, parallel reality.
Yes.
And then I'm here. I'm here, so
So
yeah.
why are you here in this lifetime in this body?
Well, I think we only have a half an hour left. um
Quick summary.
yeah. I mean, the straight up question is, I'm of service, that I really am a transition specialist. I really am here for our collective, you know, um, our evolution. Like we're at a pivotal point. You, me, everybody watching this, and all of us that are here, we are here to assist humanity. We're at that critical point. Like, are we going to make it? Right. And so,
Question.
right. So part of that dedicated effort every day of focusing on my higher frequencies is the choice of, like, yes, we've made it, and we're anchoring that reality. And that's my really
Mm,
basic answer is, I came here to help humanity make it through this massive transitional period.
mhm.
I am one of so many, which is
Yes.
great. Yeah.
Yes. You talk in your work about multidimensionality and unity consciousness. Those are themes I've seen in your writing, and I'm wondering, right now in this pivotal moment, 2021,
Mm-hmm.
how do those two things interface with each other? Why are they important right now?
Mm-hmm. I love your questions. We could just go forever. Okay. Why are they important right now? Yeah. Um, I think it has to do with that bifurcation that we were talking about earlier in terms of like which choice are you going to make?
Yeah.
What's your focus? Are you going to focus on fear or are you going to focus on unity? And so we're at a critical juncture where it matters so much more, almost like every decision or every thought. Are you choosing a positive thought? Are you choosing a judgmental thought? Our choices have so much more potency right now. So that's part of right here, right now. Like, this acceleration that we're experiencing, like, um, we, every choice contributes like almost tenfold, right? It's like I always talk about it as a matching program. When you're raising money and there's like donations. Well, it's a matching program right now where there's so much support for actually for both ends, right? For the positive and the negative. And so I would say that the timing issue of right here, right now is that um, our our positivity goes farther, right? And it's just a critical junction where um, the split is more obvious than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the divide and the chasm
Mm-hmm.
is growing. And so we don't want to let the light, we want to keep up with the balance. We want to keep up with the new and the potentiality of humanity, right? Like this is really where we can start to step into our multidimensionality and like all of our potential. And as we're shifting into believing and creating that reality for ourselves and for the collective, we are inherently accessing our abilities that our telepathic communities. Okay. We are inherently accessing our larger capacities to understand unity consciousness, our telepathic awareness
Right.
of our connection, right? So it's this mutuality, it's the micro, it's the macro, where we're contributing both to our expansion and humanity's expansion. Yeah.
Yeah, in perfect balance.
Right. It's
Yeah.
not, yes. So now it's potent. It's more potent than ever, and it's going to get more like really intense.
Is that because of certain frequencies on the earth are changing
Mhm.
that potency? Why is it happening right now in that way?
Yeah, no, that's so great. I mean, I think there's so many factors, and I would that's sort of a guesstimation on my part too, as well. Is like, okay, well, collectively, humanity's ready for this
Mm-hmm.
point. Like, we've created our timeline this way. There's also really cool stuff about how our DNA is programmed for activation at this time. Turned on by certain photonic influences that are based on our galactic alignment with the central sun. Like there's
Oh.
some really cool layers of things that are happening. And you could say like we're ready and the support is there and we just haven't been there before. And then earth's frequencies, yeah, I mean the planet's just done. There's a lot of factors that I wouldn't claim to really know, but yeah, it's time.
My one of my mentors, do you know Charles Eisenstein?
Yeah, great.
Okay, so
Yeah.
he talks about the progression of human evolution, and he talks about how right now we're in our uh like at young adulthood kind of slash late adolescence. So
Uh-huh.
we're in tribal cultures, when there used to be an initiation to become an adult, like you'd have to go off into the wilderness alone, or get beat with sticks or something, and there was always the potential that you could actually die, and
Yeah.
that's what made it an initiation. It was a big deal. So he often talks about, this is the moment for humanity where we are faced with our own demise. And yet that moment is beautiful because we have the potential to move into adulthood finally, which I would interpret that then to be the multidimensional unity consciousness self that you were just talking about. That's adulthood. That's, it's funny to me, we're in this transition point where it's still very much fringe to talk about these kinds of things, and even in spiritual communities.
Yeah.
And so we're spiritually transitioning out of, you could say, like religion or dogmatic ways of approaching life into accepting our cosmic reality, into our gifts, our intuition. And I think I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. For me, I feel when I blossom more and more into this kind of language, this kind of approach, I feel like I get kickback sometimes from people that I really respect and love who are somehow triggered by it. It's almost like by me sharing the idea that we are these like infinite beings with creative potential, and they get almost like, it's almost like heresy to them. It's like, no, 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 no. Earth is a really bad place to be, and we need to ascend out of here, or we need to, what's the word? Transcend, our humanity as soon as possible. It's almost like the earth and humanity has become this dirty thing. We got to get out of here. And to me, that's not how I most like to see it. I like to perceive it as, well, what can humans do? How can we evolve? The future is unwritten, I feel. We're in uncharted territory. But again, talking to a lot of different spiritual people, I feel that this kind of dialogue that we're having is still so like very tiny, minority of people would even understand what we're saying. So why is that? Why is this so triggering for people? Why is this so weird to people?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think, first of all, you said so many things that are so juicy that we could just launch on, in terms of like spiritual communities just wanting out, and, 5D, not 3D, and it's 3D is just yucky. But so you really touched on some core things that I just wanted to acknowledge about, like, this transition that we're working out. Right. Because even the spiritual community is like, they've got their own dialogue, and then mainstream. So it's really kind of about pioneering your own way with your own vibration and what you know to be true.
Yeah.
Right. And I found, like, I'm not here to tell anybody anything. Right. Like, I know what's true for me. I believe it 1000%. So I'm going to walk around saying, like, yeah, Arcturians, like, I got no problem telling you what's true for me. But like, I've just come to, my goal is to really surrender that everybody is on their own path, right? I know that's sort of bandied about, right? But more and more, there's the living of that, right? The action, right? And I think my answer to the really poignant question is, like, the program's pretty thick, right? It's really hard. We're bludgeoned with a program from, in utero, and and it's either our journey to question that and challenge that and find out what else is there, or not.
Yeah.
That's real straight up, is that the program, it's a well-crafted program.
Yeah.
Do I make sense when I'm saying that? Does that? And then when I say program, I mean the societal expectation of productivity and success in a profession or family or external units of measurement versus an internal reality of understanding what's true for you. So that's, and the program is one size fits all. It's not a unique, it looks like it's unique. Oh, you could get this job or this job, but it's not necessarily true to what you want to do, which is like leap off the the diving board into the void of uncertainty and find your galactic family.
Yeah, just that.
Yeah, I've gotten more comfortable in talking about it. I've found my people. And this was another thing that you said, is that people sort of push back. They're triggered, right? And it's like I've had this progression for a long time. I was moving in faith just faith that I knew what I was doing was right for me and that
Yeah.
it was accurate. And then I had a recent shift, just a couple months ago, after years of working on this. I
Mhm.
had a shift with the Arcturians in particular, where like, it's just true. It's just true. And I know it. I know it to the core of my being, really like what a near death experience does. There's this shift where
Right.
you just know it. It's unshakable. And so moving into that place, like, I'm going to talk about this. If people are triggered, it's like this natural falling away process. And I'm attracted to and attract those where we can really have this conversation. And
Mhm.
so, those that are triggered and those who know what I do, if they ever want to come towards me and have that conversation, they know I'm here.
Right.
But the triggering, I think we're kind of here. We serve that a little bit. We trigger and push
Yep.
back on that program for
We do.
sure.
That's the sense I get from you, is that, and from all the other people that I know who have these kinds of conversations, it seems like we're natural rebels in society. We're just like, oh, you want to tell me not to do that? Oh, watch me do that. Or like, it's like it's so deep within us to question things. I remember this is a funny example, in preschool, I think I was like 3 or 4 years old. I just one day decided to shave one of my eyebrows off. Just one.
That's awesome.
And I went to school and everyone was like, why'd you do that? And I was like, I don't know. I just wanted to know how it would look to have one eyebrow. And I was shamed and scolded by my parents, by my teachers. They all sat me down like it was the end of the world, Nadi. They were like, you can't do that. And I was just like, why? Like, what's the big deal? It's just an eyebrow. And it was like, I remember the heavy like pushback from the adults, of this little thing. So that was the beginning for me, and
Right.
and so yeah, I think I have had this thought of that these transition specialists that we are programmed in a way to trigger people, and it's kind of it's just getting used to that and doing it with as much love as possible and as much compassion for where people are at, and at the same time not shying away from the potential of triggering people, because for years I shut down my throat. We all did. And just in the past few years I started really focusing on that, like my voice. If you would go back to previous videos, even on my YouTube channel, you would hear this like sort of scratchy, gravelly sound.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're aware of that, when the trauma voice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh
So,
yeah.
yeah, and like just even at the start of the interview today, because I was so excited and nervous to talk to you, I could feel my throat closing, and I was just like, oh, here we go again, and just bringing awareness to that, breathing into it, because that societal programming, it's meant to just close off our questions.
Yeah.
Don't ask questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just nod and do what they tell you. And then we have to like take it upon ourselves to heal that,
Mm-hmm.
and to have the bravery and courage to just be the weirdo, be the
Yeah.
weird one,
Yeah.
and not care.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I yeah, this is a conversation that I feel like I'm having more and more with the people that I'm guiding, who are just getting into this path of like, just you have to be okay being the weird one. You just
Yeah.
have to make peace with it.
Yeah. 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 This is so great. Um, Couple of things. Number one, it's like your offerings of these podcasts are of the highest service, because one of the things in finding your own voice is to find the others who believe the same thing,
Yeah.
and to know that you're not alone if you want to shave your eyebrow off. like you are like you are. There are those of us, there are more of us that think that it is so important, that we know that it is so important that we develop that free spirit, and we develop that place that pushes against this program of shut down. And I think that the huge, and shame is such a terrible use to shut that down. There is nobody that escapes shaming, right? It's terrible. It's very successful. And And so anytime we do that, we push back, we activate that place in others who haven't pushed back.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's this really deep reflection for everybody that, like, oh, maybe there were times when they wanted to do their own thing and they didn't. And there's that sadness. And then you're going to do it. You can't do that. So many layers to
Mm-hmm.
that program, so much psychology.
Yeah.
And there's two more things I wanted to share. When I was a little kid, I was in Boston, and I'm a September baby. And you have to, if you're early in the school year, you have to test to make sure that you're okay to make it. And so my mom took me, psychological testing, and I went in, and they're like, this whole battery of tests to make sure that you understand. And so I was supposed to draw a man and a woman, stick figures, right, and everything. And then we were going back to the testing to find out if I was okay. And I'm in the back seat with this little, like, 4-year-old voice, and I'm like, I didn't exactly do what the lady wanted me to do. And so, and she, my mom was like, what happened? And I was like, well, she wanted me to draw things, and I just wanted to draw dragons. And we went in, and the woman was like, are you concerned about your daughter's ability to conform? I mean, literally,
Oh,
like,
wow.
literally, right? And my mom was great. She's like, no, she's going to be okay. So my mom was supportive. And then, we had our own relationship with psychology and all of that, or we had our own human stuff to work out. So she supported me, and I've been oppositional a little bit ever since, just like yourself. And then this is the last thing. So I think one of the ways that we can really support ourselves, in addition to finding our people, is noticing our languaging, because we repeat the devaluing program with the language that we choose when we say that we're crazy or that we're really
Oh, I
weird.
just used it. I used
I
what
will,
right.
but that's what activated it. Is this is one of my biggest passions, and I have a solution for it too, right? So crazy, weird, even stupid or dumb, any of those, like, pejorative words that we use to describe pushing back against the program,
Mm-hmm.
any of them can be substituted with the word extraordinary, and it changes everything, right? So I'm not weird, I'm extraordinary. I'm on an extraordinary path. And then you start to reinforce that in yourself. You start to model it for other people, because that's the truth. It's not weird, it's not
That's
crazy.
beautiful.
According to that program, it is, but according to my program, and I'm creating that, I'm extraordinary. And you are too, right? Like, isn't that so good?
I'm
It's
going
so
to
good.
use that. Thank you, Nadi.
Please, please. It's
Wow.
a
That's
movement.
really wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that was if I had to pick a golden nugget for this whole conversation, it's right there. It's that. I mean, because the people who are going to listen to this interview are going to, in some way, resonate with what we're talking about. And they're going to definitely have that issue in their life. So that is really nice. Thank
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And if you look at all the subjects, right? Sacred geometry, crop circles, advanced civilizations, I could call myself a number of things, right?
you.
So I always talk about that in calls and classes. It's like, we're extraordinary.
And
Really.
also, it's kind of it's it's also the cure for that phrase that I won't even give any words to, but people that question the status quo, it starts with the C and a T, and it's 2 words.
Um, oh no, it starts with a T and a C.
No, it's the first word is a C and the
Yeah.
last word is a T. And it's for people that go down rabbit holes about, secret society.
Oh, 2 words. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So
Of
if
course.
anyone feels like, oh, am I that? No, I'm just extraordinary.
Exactly. Or I'm in a class right now, and another substitution for that is I'm looking into alternative experience, or no, alternative explanations for the mainstream dialogue.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, because the C and then the T word, I don't even, yeah.
Oh, lovely. Okay, so I'm going to ask you one more question and then we'll start to wrap it up.
Yeah.
So is there something, if you could download into, this is kind of an odd visualization, but if you just had the power to benevolently download a thought into everybody's head that they could totally have the power to reject if they didn't want it, but then they could have the power to consider it. So it's not like you're forcing it on people, but just to give people the option to think about something, what would that be?
Yeah. Well, let's just pause for a second because I believe that you're asking me something that you just did with that question. Right?
Well,
So so that was a download to ask that question and that inspiration, right? So I'm seeing this as such a partnership of that was an inspired question. And I don't know what the thing that popped in as you were talking would be just 3 words, right? It would be you are love. Right? Like what else? Like that's gonna get to everything, you know?
you are love.
Yeah. Yeah. And we are love. And that
Yeah.
like it's gonna undo. It has the power, right?
Native love.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this has been extraordinary, and I'll never think of that word in the same way again. I love it.
It's so good. It's so good. Yeah.
Is there any way that you want to share with people? What ways can people connect with you if they want to explore your consciousness further?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, right. Yeah. So my website, right, which I think you're going to
I'll
post, it'll
link
be
to that
somewhere
in
around
the
this.
little
So
description.
that's Galactic Rose Geometry, and it's got all of my classes and all of the calls that I host. This is what would be useful.
Right.
So I host a wide variety of calls. So and when I say calls, what I mean is I love dialogue. I love what you're doing. I love to bring it out in each other and bring that awareness into our expansion. That's what every call is designed to do. So I I'll start with the regulars. So I teach people how to draw sacred geometry so that they have it with themselves and they know about that activation, right? And that's so fun. There's a lot of different levels, from basic to advanced. And at the community college, there's like, it's basically a 2.5 month program with all the different levels. I'm so amazed at them. And
Wow.
then, right. And then there's some really sophisticated, sophisticated yet very doable geometries like the Sri Yantra or 64 star tetrahedron, which is the fundamental pattern of space time. It is endlessly fascinating.
Hmm.
And then all of that led to calls about crop circles and exploring the fascinating depth and intelligence. And then, I have a specific call about the Arcturians and, connecting with different civilizations. And also, light language is an extraordinarily awesome subject that I love talking about in terms of direct, nonlinear transmissions of energy and higher intelligence from ourselves.
Beautiful.
And so I did a call one time of light language, whales, and dolphins, right? Because they're all just here to help us expand. And I love it. I love those calls. And I realized, similar as to what you do, I do it to meet my people. And so, it becomes this community of folks that we love to do the same thing.
Mhm.
And, you can find all of that information on my website. And then, I have a newsletter where just like once or twice a month, I'm letting everybody know about events that are coming. And, I have a YouTube channel where I put out little videos about sacred geometry and Arcturians, and, social media I have such mixed feelings. I'm, definitely available on the Facebooks and whatever else is coming next because because of all of the shifts in Facebook about privacy and all of the censorship and all of that. So we're going to move accordingly to reaching each other. But my website and my calls are a really great way to meet your people and connect with like-minded folks. Yeah.
Yeah, I was scrolling through the different calls and I thought I appreciated that these calls are affordable for people as well. They're not, it just feels very balanced. It feels doable, which I just appreciate that very much. So thank you for offering that to people.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really, that there's sliding scale or donation, but also like as little as much, I'm always open to like support and patrons, right? But
Yeah.
I know that it's going to come. I don't worry about it because the service is so important. And I just wanted to add, right? Like I did that call on the near death experiences. And so there's a passion, and and it's my greatest excitement. Like Bashar talks about, follow your excitement to the best of your ability without any insistence on the outcome.
Yes.
I just need to talk about the stuff I love to talk about, and then
Yes.
we get together. That's it.
Yes. Yep. And money flows and it all works out. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And same for you. That's what you're doing here. You just love, right? You love to talk about this stuff. And then we meet up. And I want to say I'm so grateful for the opportunity to talk about these things and the subjects that matter and the way that we connect with ourselves and grow individually and together. What you're doing, I feel like, is vital. And I want to thank you.
You. Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to take a moment just at the end here and just connect with all the beautiful people, connect energetically with all the beautiful people that are here in different times, but we're all in the now, and just see or feel or sense our hearts all connected in this mutual sharing of love. It's so beautiful. Thank you, Nadi. And I hope maybe you can come back on the show at some point in the future and we can maybe talk more about Arcturians or other things. I had like a list of things and we didn't even get to hardly any of them. So that's good. So have a wonderful experience the rest of your day. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Anya. Blessings.